for the sake of tech has absolutely no value, right? And I keep on asking this question every time I go and meet someone. Why are we so excited about this, right? We're all very excited about Gen AI. It's been growing dramatically. One of my out of office responses a few days back spoke about the number of people who visit ChatGPT on a monthly basis, right? It's a fairly large number. And it's extremely exciting, right? But why? Why is it making a disruptive impact, right? And I'm sure all of you have been talking about how you've been adopting Gen AI. I remember meeting a friend of mine. He's the CTO of a fairly large bank, and I went and met him and he said, hey, kuch bata. Give me some solution that I can go and tell the board that I've implemented Gen AI in the bank. And I actually, he's a friend, so I told him, pagal hai kya? So he said, kuch bhi de de, I want to get the board off my back, right? And finally, he and I started laughing and he said, okay, give me something meaningful, blah, blah, blah. But that's the elephant in the room, right? Often implementations are done because there's FOMO, there is pressure. Everyone wants to be in the forefront of having adopted tech. We want to tell the consumers that, hey, we're using more and more tech. And there is often a challenge around what we are trying to do, right? So this is where this comes in. There are multiple concerns, right? There are regulatory concerns. The response that you gave me, Ali, the fact that an email can't give you a response in less than 24 hours, right? There are multiple norms that exist. The real world behavior, right? So there are varying norms. We were speaking about in the panel about an older person versus a younger person versus a person in a remote part of the country versus someone who wants information in Hindi, English, Tamil, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of variance that exists. Also, can the Gen AI response actually adhere to the way the consumer wants the response? Can it really personalize it to that level, right? There are some people who like being called sir. There are some people who don't like being called sir or madam. They would like to be addressed by their first name, right? So how does the Gen AI adapt? And of course, the cost of Gen AI adoption. So Mahindra touched upon it. Only 30% will be successful. And that's the challenge, because when you haven't really thought out the benefits, this is something that often happens, right? And it's something that I continuously keep on asking in any conversation that I have at any level. Why do you want it? What is the problem you're really looking at solving? And does it really need to be Gen AI, or are there other ways and means to solve that problem? Again, the point that Mahindra brought up in the discussion. Don't put tech in the center, put the consumer in the center. And are there simpler, easier, more cost-effective ways to solve that problem, right? So let's take a look at today's customer engagement, right? And let all of us wear the hat of a consumer. I'd asked one of my team members to get a hat. He couldn't reach here in time. But haven't you often heard that if you were a consumer? We're all talking about automation, but it's not working, right? This is a picture I took, but I found it very insightful. Automation is not really working. And this happens again and again. There'll be lots of money invested, but this is what a consumer will tell you. It's not really working, right? And again, we're talking about consumers. They're not really limited to chats or calls, right? A consumer may choose a channel of communication depending on their mood. They may come to you over a phone call, they may send an email, they may actually decide to message if there is a WhatsApp or an RCS channel that exists. They may even decide to go to social media. So how do you pick up all that information? How do you track a brand and figure out how are the consumers interacting with the brand? And we are an absolute pain as consumers, right? I'm sure a lot of you have cursed a consumer saying, why the heck did the consumer have to do that? But we are an absolute pain. What does that do? It creates a lack of context across multiple channels that are being used. Often, and I spoke about this example briefly, moving from an email to a chat to a phone call, there is no journey that goes through. Moving from being acquired to onboarded to actually consuming the service in the life cycle, there are elements that get broken, right? And again, I've spoken about the empathy example. The point is, while we can put the consumer in the center, the people who serve those consumers also become very important, because they're the face of your brand, they're the face of your company. And if they are not empowered and enabled, it becomes a challenge, right? So how do you reduce the AHT, how do you increase the CSAT, right? Those are things that become challenge. And I'm sure a lot of organizations, a lot of tech folks struggle with this piece. How do you bring together information? The cost associated with bringing together the information across channels. How do you get access to that information as quickly as you can? Often it also becomes a game of KPIs, right? A customer-facing agent is given a KPI. You need to bring down your AHT by 10% year on year. That person, if they are not empowered through the right processes and tech, will do whatever is required to get a customer off the phone, right? And often it's not in the benefit of the customer because they are being measured on a KPI, or there's an SOP that exists that doesn't enable or empower them to be able to deliver on that KPI, right? What could help if the agent had a view on what was happening around, and I'll talk about it in my later slides, right? So this is fundamentally, again, what happens, right? There'll be multiple channels that will exist. They're all sitting in silos, right? I found this picture very interesting. I was in Hong Kong a few years back, and the taxi driver on his dashboard had all of these. And at that time, I didn't realize how relevant it would become in today's world, right? But this is what happens, multi-channel versus omni-channel, right? So what if GenAI could actually do that? Unify the information, set a context across all channels of engagement, and not over a period of time, not over at that point of time, but over a period of time, and bring it together and empower the agent more effectively, right? And this is what would become extremely powerful. Take Priya as an example. She wanted to renew her policy, and she tried multiple times. And because we are all impatient, we want things to be done instantaneously. We're very used to it now. We want ice delivered at home in 10 minutes, right? So we would get very irritated. We would be very unhappy about it. And the three reasons, there are three elements that matter to the person who's engaging with Priya at that instant. Do they know the intent? Why is Priya reaching out? Do they know the state of her mind, right? As in the historical data that has come together to be able to create a certain state. And can they detect the vibe of the conversation? Is Priya happy, upset, or is she irritated, right? So she would obviously be irritated because she's been trying to get the policy renewed again and again. And this is what the context piece could do fundamentally is it would establish why Priya is reaching out. It would establish Priya's history, which is the state, and it would establish Priya's sentiment when she reached out to the service provider, to the bank. And this is something that could really accelerate it because the information is flowing that she did click on the payment link, she did try to do something, her policy is due for renewal in 24 hours. Otherwise, she won't be able to drive her car on the road as an example. It's very easy for the agent to say, we noticed that you were trying to make your payment, didn't go through, your policy is due in 24 hours. Can I send you a link that will make it easier for you? In fact, the point would be even before Priya reaches out, can a message be sent to her that makes her life easier? Hopefully we'll get there some point, right? So what could we achieve? We could achieve seamless customer interaction across different channels. Could we get there? And secondly, could agents be better able to handle the conversation, right? Could they get real-time assistance? And there someone in the panel, I don't recollect who right now, touched upon the agent has multiple KPIs, right? The agent needs to address the problem effectively where the vibe of the customer changes. They need to possibly, once having done that, they need to try to cross-sell or upsell, as the case may be. If all those KPIs could be captured real time and are thrown up on the screen to the agent saying, of the 4 things you were supposed to do, you have already done 3, 1 is left. Can you finish that off? It could be done real time. It could be done post facto. But if that can be done, can the agent be more effectively empowered to respond to the customer? Can a summary be thrown up of the state of the past that makes it easier for the agent to handle? And of course, there could be suggestions or prompts. Again, the thing that always comes into play is what suggestions and prompts can actually disrupt the agent's flow. An agent, and when they are good agents, go in a flow. If something pops up, they may or may not be able to deal with it. It could often be an irritant. And I've heard that a number of times from a lot of banks that we work with saying that, hey, this could actually be an irritant. Don't do it. right? So that's also something that needs to be determined. What we believe is that the Gen AI, because it's able to bring across so much information across so many sources of data, could actually be a catalyst. And I'm sure all of you believe that. That's why there's a lot of excitement about Gen AI. Every event talks about Gen AI. Right? So these are two things that we see a lot of interest today in the banking financial services industry. Right? One is chatbots and voice bots. And the second one is conversational quality analytics, or AQM, automatic quality monitoring. Right? So this is something that we have seen consistently in multiple conversations that are happening. And these are two things that people are looking for. Can there be agenoids? McKinsey called as agentics. Can those come into play that can actually take care of the interaction? And instead of having human agents interfacing with the customer, could there be agents who are agenoids that are interfacing with the customer? And the supervisor is now actually a live agent who's monitoring those agenoids and how they're operating. It would actually make it very different. It would actually bring down the costs that any organization would have to be able to serve customers. Cost is always a factor that comes into play. Okay? And this is where Aliasgar was asking you, right? There's typically sampling that is done, right? Where you sample a certain percentage, you do QC on that percentage, and you do this. What if you could actually do it for 100%? And if you do it for 100%, of course, at not significantly higher cost, it would actually change the paradigm dramatically. The desire to do 100%, the desire to do hyper-personalization could improve dramatically if this is something that could be done. It would also change customer experience, right? Because then you can treat every customer differently. Agents, because they have KPIs and they're all humans today, will often not really capture the right vibe. They will say the customer was very happy, they gave us a 5-star. But actually, if you're able to pick up the vibe from the quality of conversation, you may actually realize it wasn't a 5-star. It was 4-star. And the agent put a 5-star because if they had put a 4-star, they would have fallen below the mark that was required, and there would have been a pleasant conversation with the supervisor. But if that can actually be captured, you really don't need this, right? I'm not going to touch upon all these bullets. Most smart agents actually want to have analytics about their performance, their calls on their own. They don't really want a supervisor to tell them. So if that is thrown at them, they would themselves look at it and say, hey, I can do better this way next time. That can also actually improve efficiencies on this. And the other part that actually comes here is also in terms of how do you then ensure that all of this also sits within the purview of your brand. One of the things that we've often seen is that when you're doing the analysis, it also needs to happen within the way the brand is engaging with the customer. It can't really go outside of that. So how can you actually be able to do that more effectively? The other thing that we have observed is this could actually make CSAT surveys a thing of the past. Another touched upon it. How many people actually respond to CSAT surveys? They're not needed. This CQA would actually give you 100% CSAT score real time. So do you really need to bother about sending out a survey? Not any longer. As long as you have a dashboard that throws up that information, it's actually taken care of. These are some customers that we already work with. These are some organizations we serve. And these are real life examples. In fact, one example has just gone live yesterday, which is a Gen AI based chatbot, which is a life insurance firm. So we haven't put that up here, but it just went live yesterday and they really started to scale up very rapidly. But again, can an agent assist to answer customer queries, reducing ASG? I'm not going to go through each of these. We've done that across industries. So there is the limited ride-sharing organizations in India, but we've used that to get new drivers to onboard onto their brand. They've been using Gen AI-based voice bots to do this. Yeah, I'm not really going to spend too much time on this. And this is quickly talk about what Exotel does. One of the things I often talk about is that a lot of people thought we were Japanese, not because of the name, but because of the fact that we don't really go out and talk about what all we do with our clients, right? A lot of people think of Exotel as a cloud telephony provider, but these are some of the things we do. In 2021, Exotel actually got two other companies into its fold, Ameo, which was a contact center provider, which is the layer you see in the middle, and Cogno, a company, All in Call, which gave us the GenAI or conversational AI platform. So all of those came together, and our whole goal is how do we integrate that, use GenAI to be able to establish a better context, not only across the communication, but also across the contact center software that you're using. Right? Again, one of the things we are extremely sensitive about is value. We've typically focused on emerging markets. We are India out. And what we realize is it's not price sensitivity that matters, it's the value that's being derived. It's not about the budgets, it's about the ROI that you get on that investment. And we today do about 1 billion voice conversations and 1 billion digital conversations every month. We would have touched the lives of about 35% of India's population through one of our services today. So that's the scale at which we operate. And these are some of the organizations we work with. So just to give you a perspective. Okay. So that's our goal. We would deliver the technologies that transfer communication between humans and between companies that engage or provide services to those humans. Right? Thank you so much.
Up.